I was pulling my late wife's old jewelry box out of the attic when a folded envelope slid out from under the false bottom. Stuffed with cash I'd never seen before, a prepaid card registered to a name I didn't recognize, and a handwritten note in my son-in-law's handwriting with my home address, my account number, and the words transfer window, 90 days. My name is Howard Briggs. I'm 67 years old. I live in a 2-story colonial in Naperville, Illinois that Eleanor and I bought the year our daughter Corinne was born. Eleanor passed 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 7 weeks from diagnosis to the end. And what I'm about to tell you started the way most disasters start. Quietly, behind a face I thought I knew. Corinne had asked me to bring the jewelry box down. Said she wanted to go through her mother's things. Said it was time. Said she'd been carrying the grief long enough and was finally ready. I believed her because why wouldn't I? She's my daughter. She has Eleanor's eyes and Eleanor's laugh, and the same way of tilting her head when she's listening that used to make me feel like the most important man in the room. So pour yourself something. Get comfortable. Because the smallest thing, a false bottom in a cedar box that's been sitting in an attic for 4 years, can come open at exactly the wrong moment and show you everything. Mine opened on a Saturday morning in March, 9:47. I remember because I'd just heard the radio in the kitchen switch over to the news hour, and I remember thinking I had plenty of time before Corinne and her husband arrived for lunch. I didn't even pick the envelope up right away. I just sat down on the attic floorboards with my back against a storage box and stared at it, the way you stare at something your brain is refusing to process. You spend 38 years building a life with someone. You put 2 kids through college. You move into a house and you sand the floors yourself, and you hang every picture, and you know every drawer that sticks, and every step that creaks going down to the basement at night. That house becomes the record of your life together. And when the person you built it with is gone, it becomes a kind of museum. You don't change much. You leave the coffee mug on the hook where she always put it. You keep her book on the nightstand for 2 years before you finally move it. Eleanor's jewelry box had sat in that attic months after she passed. I couldn't look at it. Couldn't throw it away. It just stayed up there under a canvas cloth near the window, and I told myself I'd deal with it when I was ready. I wasn't ready. But Corinne said she was, so I went up to get it. When I lifted it down from the shelf, something shifted inside. Heavier than jewelry should be, and wrong. Like the weight was off-center. The bottom of the box had always been lined with dark blue velvet, and I remembered the velvet. Remembered Eleanor keeping her grandmother's pearl earrings in there. But as I carried the box down the attic stairs, one of the legs caught the railing. Box tipped sideways. And the false bottom, a thin cedar panel I'd had no idea existed, slid open like a drawer. The envelope came with it. I sat down on the top stair, didn't open it right away, just held it. It was a regular white business envelope, sealed, slightly thick, no name on the outside, no return address. Just sealed like someone expected to come back for it. I want to be honest with you. If I had been someone else in that moment, I might have put it aside. Told myself it was Eleanor's private business. Let it sit on the kitchen counter until Corinne arrived and handed it to her without looking inside. But something in the weight of it was wrong. Something in the way it had been hidden, not tucked carelessly, but placed deliberately, behind a panel that required the box to tip at exactly the right angle, made my hands open it before my brain caught up. Inside was $400 in 20s, rubber-banded, a prepaid Visa card, and a single sheet of folded notebook paper, not typed, handwritten. In a scrawl I recognized because I'd watched it sign birthday cards and Christmas cards and a thank you note after I paid for Corinne's wedding. It was Garrett's handwriting. My son-in-law. I read it once. Then I read it again slowly, the way you reread something when the first read didn't take, because the meaning is too far outside the normal range of things. At the top, my home address. My routing number and account number for the joint checking account I'd kept open since Eleanor passed. The one Corinne had co-signing rights on in case of emergency. And below that, a rough sequence. Not a formal document. More like notes a person writes to themselves when they're working something out. 90-day window after estate finalization. Corinne confirms POA active. Transfer 40-50K to new accent before he notices. Close access after. Quit claim on property, use refinance angle. And at the very bottom, one word underlined twice. I sat on those attic stairs for a long time. The furnace kicked on somewhere below me. A car went past on the street outside. Normal Saturday sounds. The kind of sounds that keep going whether or not the world has just rearranged itself under your feet. Here's the thing I want you to understand, because this is the part most people skip over when they hear a story like this. I wasn't angry yet. Not even close. What I felt in that first 10 minutes was something more like vertigo. Like the floor had tilted just enough that you have to grab the wall to stay upright, but not enough that anyone watching would see it. Garrett. He's 41 years old. He sells commercial real estate in the western suburbs. He's been married to my daughter for 11 years. He coaches their son Aiden's soccer team on Saturday mornings. He shakes my hand at Thanksgiving and calls me Howard, and once helped me re-shingle half the garage roof on a Labor Day weekend, when I threw out my back trying to do it alone. And here was his handwriting, on a piece of notebook paper, hidden in my dead wife's jewelry box, in my attic, with my account numbers on it. I put everything back in the envelope. I put the envelope in the front pocket of my flannel shirt. Then I carried the jewelry box the rest of the way downstairs and set it on the dining room table, and went and made coffee. Black, 1 cup. Sat at the kitchen island and drank it while the clock above the stove moved from 9:52 to 10:11. You spend enough time in a quiet house and you get very good at sitting still with hard things. At 10:37 I pulled the envelope back out and spread everything flat on the counter. The prepaid Visa card was registered under the name T. Holloway. I wrote that down on a notepad by the phone. The account number I recognized was from a checking account at Midwest Community Credit Union. The same account where my pension direct deposits had gone since I retired from the city engineering department 6 years ago. Corinne had been added as an authorized signer 2 years ago when I had knee surgery and couldn't get to the bank myself for a few weeks. We'd never changed that after I recovered. I stared at quit claim on property, use refinance angle. Quit claim deed. That's a document that transfers ownership of real estate from one person to another, no warranties attached. If you don't know what one is, most people don't. That's part of the problem. It's one of the simplest legal instruments in property law, and one of the most commonly abused in elder financial fraud. You can sign one without fully understanding what you're handing over. And if someone is managing the paperwork around you, presenting one document inside a stack of others, moving fast, keeping tone friendly, keeping tone supportive, I stopped there. Because that phrase, keeping tone supportive, that was something Corinne had been doing. I'd felt it. I'd noticed it the way you notice a change in the weather before you can name it. Softer than usual, more patient, calling more often, showing up on Saturdays with food she'd cooked, things she knew I liked. I'd thought it was grief, finally moving, finally reaching for connection. Eleanor had been gone 4 years and maybe Corinne was just coming out the other side of it. I'd thought that. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in almost a year. Ray Kowalski. We'd been in the same engineering division at the city for 15 years. He left before I did, took a job advising the county assessor's office on property records and title disputes. He knows real estate documentation the way I know load-bearing walls. He picked up on the second ring. Howard, everything okay? The question caught me off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because I didn't know how to answer it honestly. No, I said, I don't think it is. There was a pause on his end. Short, but the kind that means someone is shifting into a different mode. Talk to me. So I read him the note, word for word. When I got to the quitclaim line, he went quiet. Read that again, he said. I did, he exhaled. Howard, that's not a plan somebody wrote for fun. That's a sequence. That's someone who's looked at your assets and worked out a timeline. I already knew that. Hearing it from Ray made it heavier. The prepaid card, I said. Registered to a T. Holloway, yeah, he said. That's a buffer. Somebody uses a third-party name to set up an account, receives transfers, moves them before anyone can trace it cleanly. It's not sophisticated, but it doesn't need to be if nobody's watching. I asked him what I should do. He didn't answer right away. I could hear something on his end, a chair scraping, the sound of a door closing. Howard, listen, I need you to hear me clearly. Do not confront anyone today. Not your daughter, not him, not anyone. You confront them now. The note walks out of your house in a pocket and you've got nothing. A pause. Is there anyone you trust with your finances? A bank officer, a financial advisor, someone outside the family? I thought about it. I have an account rep at the credit union. Karen somebody, young woman. She walked me through the estate stuff after Eleanor passed. Call her Monday. First thing. Don't call from home if you can help it. And Howard, do you have an attorney? A guy who did my will, not him. You need someone who handles elder law. Financial exploitation specifically. There's a firm in Naperville, Brandt and Associates. Ellen Brandt is who you want. She's handled a dozen cases like this, and she doesn't lose them. Cases like this, I said. You've seen this before. A long beat. Howard, financial exploitation of elderly parents by family members is one of the most underreported crimes in this country. Most of it never gets to a courtroom because the victim won't press charges against their own child. It's not rare, it's just quiet. Another pause. Don't be quiet. We hung up after that. The house felt different when I put the phone down. Not threatening, just altered. Like a painting you've walked past 1,000 times that you suddenly see differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. I want to say something to you here, and I want you to hear it directly. If you're a parent listening to this and your adult child has started being unusually attentive after years of distance, pay attention to that. I'm not saying distrust your children. Most of the time that attention is exactly what it looks like: love, guilt, growth. But if the attention comes paired with financial conversations you didn't initiate, paperwork you didn't ask for, a slow and gentle pressure toward decisions about your property or your accounts, slow down. You're allowed to slow down. You're allowed to say, "Let me think about that." I spent the rest of that Saturday doing something I should have done 2 years earlier. I sat down at my desk with 3 months of bank statements and I read every line. Not the totals, the line items. There were 4 transfers I didn't fully recognize, small ones. $200 here, $350 there. The memo line said things like household reimbursement and shared expenses, vague enough that I'd glanced past them. Corinne had co-signing rights. Small transfers from a spouse or family member with co-signing rights don't trigger fraud alerts at most banks. But 4 transfers spread over 8 weeks, totaling just over $900. Testing the water, I photographed every statement with my phone. Then I opened the cedar box and photographed the note, the cash, the prepaid card, all of it, and I emailed the photos to myself from a secondary email address I hadn't used in years. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it. Corinne and Garrett arrived at 12:15. Corinne had brought a pot of turkey chili, my favorite, and Garrett had a 6-pack of the pale ale I usually keep in the garage refrigerator. He shook my hand at the door the way he always did, firm, friendly, that practiced warmth of a man who sells things for a living. "Howard, good to see you, man," Garrett, I said. "Come on in." We ate at the dining room table with the jewelry box sitting right there at one end where I'd left it. Corinne noticed it right away. Her eyes went to it before she sat down. "Dad, you got it down. Came down this morning," I said. "I thought you might want to go through it after lunch." She nodded, and for just a second, just a fraction, something moved across Garrett's face. Not panic, more like calibration, like a man running a quick internal calculation. I reached for my water glass and didn't react. We talked about their son Aiden's soccer season. We talked about a leak in their upstairs bathroom they'd been putting off fixing. Corinne mentioned, casually, the way she had a few times before, that interest rates were starting to move in an interesting direction. Said a friend of hers from work had just refinanced and pulled out equity to consolidate some debt and it had gone really smoothly. "You ever think about that, Dad? With the house?" I chewed a piece of cornbread. "Here and there," I said. "I'd want to understand it better before I touched anything." Sure, Garrett said. "No rush. Rates are just, the window's getting interesting, is all." "I'll look into it," I said. He smiled. "I actually know a guy who specializes in this. Works with homeowners in your situation specifically. Equity-rich, fixed income. He's in Schaumburg. I could set up an intro call if you're ever curious." "That's thoughtful," I said. "Let me think on it." After lunch, Corinne sat with the jewelry box and went through it piece by piece. I watched her face while she held her mother's things, and I'll be honest with you, that was the hardest part of the whole day. Because watching her hold Eleanor's strand of freshwater pearls, watching her eyes go soft the way they do when grief catches you sideways, I thought about how a person can be 2 things at once: a loving daughter, and a participant in something that wasn't love at all. I don't know how much of it was her and how much was him. I still don't, not completely. They left around 4. Garrett shook my hand again at the door, said it had been a good afternoon, said we should do it more often. "We will," I said. I closed the door and stood in the entryway for a few minutes, looking at the coat hooks Eleanor had asked me to put up the second summer we lived here. Just 2 simple hooks. Nothing decorative. But she'd wanted them exactly there, at exactly that height, because she was tired of jackets ending up on the banister. I'd put them up on a Tuesday afternoon while she was at the grocery store. She came home, saw them, and smiled like I'd done something significant. That's the marriage I'd had. Coat hooks on a Tuesday. And now I was standing in that same entryway with an envelope in my shirt pocket that had my account numbers on it in my son-in-law's handwriting. I called Ellen Brandt's office first thing Monday morning. Her assistant put me through to her directly once I said Ray Kowalski's name. She asked me to walk her through what I had. I did, slowly, completely. The note, the transfers, the quitclaim reference, the T. Holloway prepaid card, the conversation at lunch about refinancing the Schaumburg advisor Garrett had mentioned. She was quiet for a moment when I finished. "Miss Briggs," she said, "this is a textbook pattern for family-based financial exploitation of an elderly homeowner. I've seen it more times than I'd like. The co-signing access, the incremental transfers, the referral to a third-party advisor with no clear credentials. These are steps as in a process. What kind of process? In the most common version, here's what happens. The third-party advisor comes in, runs a soft pitch on refinancing, makes it sound like smart retirement planning. You sign some preliminary paperwork. Nothing binding, you're told. But buried in that paperwork can be a power of attorney transfer, a quitclaim instrument, authorization to move funds. The equity exits your property before you understand what you agreed to. The advisor takes a cut, the family member who made the referral benefits indirectly. I sat down. The account number on that note, she continued. Your credit union, have you spoken to them? Not yet. I want you to go in today. Don't call. Go in. Ask to speak with a branch manager or your account representative. Tell them you have reason to believe an unauthorized transfer sequence may be planned on your account, and you need to freeze co-signing access immediately and place a fraud alert. Don't say who. Just do it. And my daughter? A careful pause. That depends on what you want the outcome to be, Mr. Briggs. There's a version of this that involves law enforcement, and there's a version that involves a family conversation, with documentation, with legal counsel present, that makes the plan impossible to execute and makes very clear that you know everything. Sometimes that's enough. The predatory party, in this case I'd be focused on your son-in-law, understands the exposure and withdraws. Sometimes it goes further. I want it to stop, I said. All of it. Then let's start with the credit union. I drove to Midwest Community on Jefferson Avenue that afternoon. I asked for the branch manager by name, a man named Dale who'd attended Eleanor's memorial service, which I'd never forgotten. He sat across from me in the small glass office off the main floor. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. I told him I'd come across information suggesting someone with co-signing access might attempt an unauthorized transfer in the next few weeks. I wanted the access revoked and a fraud alert placed on the account. I wanted a record of this conversation with a date stamp. He didn't ask me who. He just nodded once, slowly, and said, Howard, I'm glad you came in. That hesitation that people talk about, when someone knows something, they can't tell you directly. I saw it cross his face before he picked up the phone to call the operations team. That told me the account had already been looked at. Maybe not touched yet, but looked at. I drove home, went to my desk, pulled out a fresh legal pad, and wrote down every conversation, every date, every transfer, every lunch comment about refinancing, every handshake at the door. Documented it the way I'd been trained to document site inspections in my engineering years. Dates, times, specific language, no editorializing. Ellen Brandt's paralegal called 2 days later to confirm she'd received my notarized copies of the note and bank statements. The documentation, she said, was solid. I didn't hear from Corinne for the rest of that week, which was unusual. By Thursday she called, asked how I was doing. Asked if I'd thought any more about talking to Garrett's contact in Schaumburg. Actually, I said, I've been talking to a financial advisor of my own. A short pause. Oh, someone I know? No, I said. She came recommended through Ray Kowalski. Another pause longer. That's great, Dad. I'm glad. She's very thorough, I said. Very thorough. We talked for another couple minutes about nothing in particular and then said goodbye. Saturday morning of the following week, Garrett called my cell directly. First time he'd ever called me directly. Usually I heard from him through Corinne, or at the door. Howard, hey! Just following up on the Schaumburg intro. Nolan, the advisor, he's in town next week. I wanted to see if you'd be open to a quick cup of coffee. No pressure, no presentation. Just a conversation. I let a beat go by. Garrett, I said, I appreciate that. I do. But I found something in Eleanor's jewelry box a couple of weeks ago that I've been thinking about. Silence. The kind of silence that has a sound to it. What do you mean? Careful, measured. A note, I said. In your handwriting, with my account numbers on it, and a timeline. I heard him breathe in. He didn't say anything for a moment. Howard, I can explain. I know you can, I said. I'd like you to do that in person. With Corinne present. And with my attorney present. I'll have Ellen Brandt reach out to you to schedule. He started to say something. I didn't let him finish. Garrett, I said quietly. I've been an engineer for 35 years. I build things that have to hold weight. And the first thing you learn in that work is that a flaw in the foundation doesn't stay hidden. It just waits. I hung up. I'm not going to tell you the next few weeks were easy. They weren't. There was a conversation with Corinne that I don't have the right words for yet. Sitting in the same kitchen where she'd learned to ride a bike in the backyard, where she'd called me from the hospital when Aiden was born, and watching her sit across the table from me with her hands folded, and her mother's eyes looking at the grain of the wood and saying, I didn't know how far it had gone, Dad. I didn't ask enough questions. I believed her. I still do, mostly. It's more complicated than a villain and a victim. It usually is. Garrett met with Ellen Brandt. The Schaumburg meeting never happened. The co-signing access stayed revoked. The account flagged for activity remains clean. Thomas Holloway, the name on the prepaid card, turned out to be a cousin of Garrett's from Decatur who owed him money and had let his name be used for the account setup. That detail alone told Ellen everything she needed about premeditation. Garrett is no longer involved in my financial life in any way. That's the part I can tell you. The rest is still being worked through, the way these things are when family is tangled up in it. It's not clean, it won't be. The jewelry box is on the dresser in the spare room now. I cleaned it out, oiled the cedar, replaced the velvet lining. Eleanor's pearls are back inside. Her mother's earrings. A small gold bracelet I gave her on our 20th anniversary, that she wore almost every day until she couldn't anymore. I left the false bottom in. But I removed the panel entirely. Nothing hidden in there now. Just a box that holds what it's supposed to hold. Here's what I want you to take from this, and I'm going to say it plainly because I've been sitting with it long enough that I know how I want it said. The mistake most people make is waiting until something is obvious. By the time it's obvious, it's usually too late. The paperwork has cleared, the money has moved, and you're left trying to unwind something that was designed not to be unwound. If you're 60 or older and you have property, you need to know 3 things right now. First, a quitclaim deed can transfer ownership of your home with almost no oversight. If someone presents you with a stack of documents and tells you to just sign here, stop. Call an independent attorney before you sign anything. Second, co-signing access to a bank account is not the same as emergency access. If you gave someone that access for a temporary reason, remove it when the reason is over. It doesn't remove itself. Third, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has a dedicated office for elder financial exploitation. It's free to contact. Their number is on their website. Your state's Adult Protective Services handles these cases too. Pull your last 3 bank statements. Read the line items, not just the totals. If a transfer doesn't have a clear memo line you recognize, ask about it out loud. You are not paranoid for asking. And if you're someone whose parent handles their own finances and you've been meaning to check in, not to take over, just to understand, do it this week. Sit down with them, ask questions, look at things together. That conversation, however awkward, is the one that protects them. Here's what I want you to do tonight. Comment 1 if you think I handled this correctly. Comment 2 if you think Corinne deserved more time to explain before I involved an attorney. Comment 3 if you've ever found something, in a box, in a drawer, in a phone, that changed the way you saw someone you thought you knew completely. And under your number, tell me where you're watching from. Your city, your state, what time it is right now. I read these. Everyone. There's something about knowing a person in Tulsa is listening at 11 p.m. or someone in Vermont is on their front porch at 6 in the morning that makes this feel less like talking into the air. If this story reached something in you, pause for just a second and hit the like button. It costs you nothing and it tells the algorithm to put this in front of someone tonight who might need to hear it. Subscribe and turn the bell on, because every week I bring you stories like this one. Real human stories about trust and money and the people we thought we knew, and what we do when the floor tilts. This is a fictional story, built from patterns I've observed across documented elder financial fraud and family exploitation cases reported across the United States. All names, locations, and details are original. Nothing here is taken from any single real case. But the pattern is real. It's happening in quiet houses right now, in neighborhoods that look just like yours. If any part of this hit too close, please reach out to a licensed elder law attorney, your local Adult Protective Services office, or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You don't have to handle it alone. Sometimes the thing that protects you isn't a lock on the door. Sometimes it's just knowing that a false bottom can open when the angle is right, and being the one who looks inside before someone else decides what to do with what's in there. Pay attention, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.